All right, let's do this. Is this the camera ready? Is it rocking and rolling? Do I look good? Okay. Welcome to Chadev, everybody. I'm Brett, and yeah, we got Jared and company coming at us to talk to us about survey results. That's what you're all here to hear about. Bated breath, right? So we want to give a shout out to our sponsors that you can see here. They make this pizza and the other foods that we provide to you possible. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, sponsors. Appreciate it. Let's see, Rob, you have something you want to show, right? Let's see here. Why don't you get that pulled up? Kyle, in a sec, we're going to need to switch over to the screen for the feed. While he gets that ready, next week we've got Derek. Derek's going to be coming at us right back here with a talk about maybe I shouldn't be a programmer, right? So that'll be good. Yeah. I've certainly thought that a few times, so I bet we all have. All right, so yeah, Rob.
Hey, y'all. I produce a documentary series here locally. It's a web series. It's abstractly about how the South is changing, but really trying to ask these big questions about what the future looks like as it comes into shape around us as we build it, right? One of the episodes focused on Chattanooga is about the innovation district and the innovation economy being built up here. And I've been trying to find ways to open up that conversation to more lay people, more kids, more older folks, more people in other sectors, just like what the impact of technology on society and what invention and innovation will mean for a concrete, local economy like this. So I asked Brett if Chadev didn't want to collaborate in some way. And so last week I did interviews with 5 of you, and I really appreciate it, and made this little piece.
Once you know how to think about it, you can program in anything else that's ever going to exist. It's just syntax and grammar and memorizing some keywords and libraries. You have to learn how to program and how to think about it.
But I would love for this to be an ongoing collaboration. Like the question just was, what were you self-taught, and did you self-learn coding? What advice do you wish you had gotten that would have made a difference to you when you were learning? And what do you think is most important for kids who are learning right now to appreciate about the opportunities that are coming to exist? And so if you want to carry on that conversation, we can do it again next week. We can do it again anytime. You can get my email address or like my page, plug right here. But thank you very much for doing it.
All right. Who's round number 1 here? So it's like a 3-part thing that they're going to be doing. So yeah, give it up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Adam Rutherford. I work with Jared Menard at a company called SociallyU. We are half the company. A few months ago, Jared had come to me, and we were just talking about salaries, compensation, et cetera, like that, because he's going to embark on the journey of asking for a raise, which is terrifying normally. And so in this, Jared thought, well, I should find out, what's my range of compensation? Am I fairly compensated? Am I unfairly compensated? Am I looking for too much, or should I just be happy? And so many of you, including myself, took a survey that Jared wrote. And in that survey, your basic, normal, sort of anonymous questions. What's your salary? Do you get a 401k? Et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of opened up, so he and I talked a lot following that about, the community as a whole. Here in Chattanooga, we've changed a lot. We're moving away from that sort of tightwad in a cubicle that you imagine from the 80s to just sort of this bigger, broader idea of what development is, and more importantly, what we're worth. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. So as we talked about that, he comes with a survey, and we've gotten lots of responses for it. And him and Tim Ojo are going to go over exactly what they found statistically, what's good, what didn't really work. And it allows us to explore, if you're looking for another job, what to ask for. And just in general, so that we can all be a little bit more open with our compensation and sort of set a standard, a precedent. I guess that's basically it. So here's Jared Menard. He's beautiful. Be kind. You don't have to clap for me.
Don't turn the mic off.
Don't turn the mic off. All right. Did not.
Can you hear me now? Am I hot? Am I good? All right. So thanks for coming out, everybody. Thanks for coming here. What's that? There we go. Now it's on. Let me try that again. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming to hear us ramble about some charts and graphs that we created, and hope you find this interesting. So, disclaimer, I am not a statistician. I can barely say the word. This is my attempt at doing stats, and it looks pretty much worthless. I'm also not a great public speaker. I think Elon Musk is better than me at public speaking. If any of y'all have listened to his talks, you'll know that he doesn't set a very high bar for public speaking. He has the crutch of releasing really awesome cars, and I just have charts and graphs like this one. So enjoy the ride. All right, so what was our response like? I got 68 responses. The current Chadev meetup population is 556 people, which works out to be about 12%. I don't know what our population was at the end of 2015. I could probably work that out by looking at like when you joined Chadev or whatever. But that's our response rate. If you filled out the survey, thank you. If you didn't, do it this next cycle. I'll talk about that more later. We need to get this number up so that our data is statistically is significant instead of just being interesting. So I've got some interesting stuff to share with you guys. Some people have asked me, why not just do Glassdoor.com? Why not just look at Glassdoor and see what they have to say about how much I should get paid or what the Chadev community should look like? Why not just use Glassdoor instead of doing a survey? But I'm interested in this community and this group of people. I'm part of this community, and I wanted to see what we were like. And I lost my train of thought. But you'll see here, title matters. This is a few different survey ranges from Glassdoor.com for engineer, developer, and web developer. Looks like software developers in Chattanooga do better than the engineers. Found that to be interesting. I think that maybe that means we're more honest, because I don't really think software engineering is a thing. I think it's mostly development. But I don't want to get too pedantic. That's what Chris Keithley's for. You'll look, if you see the Chadev survey results here, the 4 M's, mean, median, mode, and mine. My salary is $70,000 a year. Just figured I'd throw that out there for transparency. And yeah, you can kind of look at that and absorb those numbers. Looks like we kind of do more or less the same as the national average, or as the Chattanooga average, depending on which of these data points you look at. So yeah, there's that. You guys can look at these more and kind of ponder these numbers amongst yourselves later. Now, if you're feeling bad about how much money you make, or really good, I read this Huffington Post article recently about income inequality and how everyone in America is more broke than you think they are. So you can kind of look at this. You have the number of how much you make a year, and you can kind of compare yourself to the rest of America. And you can either use that to feel good about yourself, because you're probably in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or maybe, I don't think anyone is actually a 1%er. in this group, but maybe you are. You can either feel good about yourself, or you can use that to have some compassion and humility on the circumstances of other people in this city and this nation. You can see that all of us hold some amount of privilege with just how much money we make, and use that responsibly, humbly, and wisely. Anyhow, that's that. Who are Chadevs? How long have we been doing this? Hopefully you all can read that. Most of us are pretty new at this. We've been doing this less than a decade. So the question is, does years of experience affect how much money you make? And also, disclaimer, I'm moving, I'm making that hard on you, aren't I? That's okay. These are just correlations. This isn't causation, and the pool of data that we have isn't super large, so it's probably huge margins of error and all that other statistical mumbo jumbo. But it's kind of fun to just make regression lines and look at this stuff and see what comes out of it. So, does experience affect your salary? Turns out it does. Turns out if you have 7 years of experience, it's like the 21 of computer programming, like stay 21 forever, stay 7 years of experience forever, you can make that big money. So there you go. There's like some pretty consistent growth here, and then it kind of spreads out. I don't know why that is. We can do more surveys and try to cluster this data a little more effectively so we can kind of figure out causation here. There's always that one guy that doesn't want something. So there's one person, maybe two, that don't want a free Tesla. So I don't know who you are, but congratulations to you and not wanting a free Tesla. I'm proud of you. How much do we work? Most of us work 40 hours, rest 50, and then there's kind of a smattering in between. I work about 35 hours a week usually, if you count lunch break as not being an hour of work. So I'm at work for 8 hours a day, but I do about 7 hours of work, to sometimes 6.5. Hi, Andre. So this brings up like a philosophical thing that I have. I feel like we procrastinate a lot and don't work a lot, and that's just the reality. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think what we could do is acknowledge that, own up to that, work hard, work less hours, and do other stuff. Don't be chained to a desk for 40 or 50 hours a week, because it might not actually equate to more productivity. There's some things where it is just like, I've got to grind this out over a certain number of hours, but some things, you work hard for like 4 or 5 hours a day, and then you're spent, and you spend the rest of the morning or day on Reddit. True story. So does hours worked affect your salary in any way? It looks like it might. The more you work, you might make less. There's a lot of variance, but that's just the regression that my software came up with. To me, this kind of validates this philosophy that I have, that you can probably work less, do more, and still produce meaningful work. There's a lot of outliers, stats and stuff, but I like that regression line. It makes me feel happy. Books read. Does reading make you more money? Turns out that it kind of doesn't really matter that much if you read books. There's a slight upward tick to that regression line, but there's also a lot of outliers, so take it for what it's worth. There you go. Let's see. Does your company offer insurance? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question. Does that affect your salary? Turns out it does. Now, I think that there's actually two clusters here. I think that this half of the data is probably people that are self-employed, that are doing contracting work, and they just get paid per contract, per job, and they set some of that aside for insurance, some for taxes, and they don't get free insurance from their company. And so that's why they kind of have this higher, there's a big range here. This is slightly higher than that over there. I think this group of people are just mostly entry-level jobs, or it's be blunt, kind of crappier jobs. And if you offer insurance like that, that ceiling is a little lower, but the floor is also higher. So if you don't get insurance and you're in this group, think about your situation a little bit. Does how much time off you get affect your salary? Or is there a correlation there? Turns out that it does. Once again, there's a lot of noise in the data. There's a lot of outliers. But the more vacation you have, it looks like there's kind of like this upward trend. Later, I'll show a comparison between years of experience and vacation days. There's also a correlation there. So years of experience and vacation days are kind of also related. So all that stuff kind of goes hand in hand to form a general trend. And there's that. So the longer you work, the more time off you get. Does your number of companies you work for affect your salary? Turns out that also does, which that also correlates with years of experience. So the longer you're doing it, the more vacation you get typically, and the longer you've been doing it, the more companies you work for, and that also is an indicator of increased salary. I think I might have had those out of order. I kind of already showed a slide like this earlier. No, I didn't. I think I've gotten lost here. So yeah, salary and experience. Obviously, companies work for and experience. There's also a relationship there, like I just said. Here's an interesting one. If you have a degree or don't have a degree, what effect does that have on your salary? Well, it turns out if you have a degree, I'm sorry. Now, this is like these whiskers here are pretty high and pretty low, so it does look like, at least in this community, in these results, it's a narrower band, and you can still make like $120,000. Or look at this guy up here, this outlier. He is the highest. He's the one ring that rules them all. He has a degree, or she. Probably she. I'm just saying. I didn't ask for gender in this survey. Maybe next time. But just think about that. If you don't have one, maybe you don't need it. So this is a weird question. The question here was, do you believe in the concept of left brain, right brain? And it was roughly 50-50. Most of us are optimists and believe what we've been told to be true. And it looks like it doesn't really matter, basically. But I thought I'd throw that in there just because I believe in left brain, right brain. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. Different people believe different things. 401k. I do not have a 401k. I've had a 401k in every other job before my current one, but I don't have one now. I also make less now than I've ever made before. Out of college, I made like $75,000 and moved to a job that I think made like $100,000 a year. But then I moved to Chattanooga and lost my security clearance. And I didn't lose it, I left it. There's a difference. Yeah. I think it's inactive right now, but yeah. So if you don't have a 401k, that might be an indicator that you're not going to get paid as much. So just think about your situation and what your benefits package is, and see like if a job offers a 401k, they might be taking better care of you in other respects as well. Company size. So when we do the next survey, there's a standardized set of company sizes that I didn't know about when I made this survey. I just kind of made up some numbers and had you guys fill it out. Tim Ojo pointed out to me that there's this agreed upon company size range, and we'll use that next time. But most of us are in small companies, and so does that affect salary? Turns out it does. If you work for a bigger company, they're going to pay you more. Or if you're all on your own, that's probably where you have the most capacity to do great things. So think about your situation, what you want. Here's real life data. Choose wisely. Does your company pay for food? This is meals covered in a month. Once again, I just made up some numbers, or maybe I had you guys enter in whatever number you wanted. Looks like most of us don't get free food, but some of us do. Does that affect your salary? It actually does. Ever so slightly, that line goes down. So there is no free lunch, basically. And look, I mean, like even slopes, the outliers here constantly go down. So 4 is a little higher, but whatever. But that's an indicator to me that such thing as free food or free beer or anything. Yeah?
Meals could be considered.
They are. They definitely are.
So therefore, that's
True story. He said that meals can be considered a form of compensation. And so that's a pretty straight line. And if you kind of factor that in, then maybe it's straight and it doesn't really matter. And I think that's true. That makes sense to me. But I also want to be pessimistic and think that if you get free food, then it's not actually free. But yeah, there's not much of a difference there. We need more data. I guess that was the end of my talk. There we go. Thank you for listening to my mediocre explanation of these graphs. Oh, yeah, I was going to say that. We will figure out a way to distribute this to everyone who's interested. I had said that this data would be kind of anonymous at the beginning, and maybe round 2 we can kind of figure out what sort of licensing we want to put on this, if you will. I kind of want to kind of keep this like just within our community, and so we'll figure out a way to distribute that, maybe over Slack or something. We can send links to this slideshow. What's that?
Dropbox link on Slack.
Yeah, we can do that. Dropbox link on Slack. Here's to Mojo.
Thank you.
Magic. There you go. See, I'm not very smart. Or funny. Yeah, certainly not as insane as he was. All right, so my involvement with the project was, I found out what he was doing. I thought it was pretty neat. I'm sort of going to take this in a slightly different direction. I thought it was pretty neat the types of data he was gathering, and I thought, what could we, can we glean some more information from it and stuff? Can we glean some more information from it? Can we get, can we get some information about like what developers in Chattanooga, what their backgrounds are, what kind of companies they work for, things like that. At first I suggested to him to publish this on GitHub or something like that and have people sort of let loose on it. But then I thought, well, as a personal challenge to myself, I have a teeny little bit of background in data science, having had somebody pay for me to go to grad school. Thank you, large insurance company that's on the hill. Starts with a C. But I'm not a trained data scientist. I don't know data science that well. We had someone who wasn't a statistician, and now we have someone who's not a data scientist. What the heck are we doing up here? I don't know, but we're talking, you're listening, and it must be the free pizza. Anywho, so my intent is to sort of ask questions of the data, show how I got those questions answered, and share those answers. So we can sort of delve into data science a little bit. And the first task in data science is obviously understanding and cleaning the data. That's what data scientists spend 80 to 90% of their time doing, according to the stats, which is pretty sad, but whatever. But because I had a much smaller much smaller sample size, we had 68 surveys. 68 respondents. One got thrown out because it was just a bad respondent. It was much easier to clean the data and everything. So first thing to do is handle missing data. There's lots of ways to handle missing data. You could sort of like average out all the other respondents' responses. So if someone didn't respond to how many hours do you work or something like that, you could just sort of do an average and plop it in there. Or you could do some kind of sentinel value like -1 or something like that, showing that they didn't ask for the survey. Or you could sort of, there's a bunch of things you could do. So for example, the high school diploma question, there was one person that didn't answer that question. So there was one person that didn't answer that. So I, well, looking at the fact that 90% or 99% of the respondents answered they had a high school diploma, then the average for that was basically, yes, that person had a high school diploma. There was a question having to do with, is your degree related to your current job? And many of the people who answered that no, they don't have a degree, did not answer that question, is your degree related to your current job? But if they don't have a degree, then clearly their degree is not related to their current job, so you can then automatically assume that, well, you can then automatically state that that the degree is not related to their current job because they don't have a degree and things like that. Also in the survey, there was a free text box for your stack, basically what kinds of things you do, or what kind of tools you use. So people would respond something like maybe OSX and OSX all put together, and had to standardize that to OSX. Or people say that they write some Angular, React, Node.js, ES6, whatever it is. But these are all JavaScript frameworks, right? So if we're trying to get a comprehensive, an idea of how many people work in JavaScript kind of thing, then you sort of want to standardize all that into one. And this stuff could be done easier because it's a smaller data set. But so I could sort of do it by hand or just write little macros to do it. Whereas if I had 67,000 or 67 million responses instead of 67, it would be much harder to do. So our binning, Jared mentioned that there was some sort of arbitrary collection of what company size you work with. No, you're good. What company size you work with, and I sort of just bin them into, instead of saying 200 people, 300 people, 400 people, I just sort of bin them into small, medium, large, enterprise, very extra small. And I could have done at-large detection, but I chose not to. For example, there was someone who had about 180 days off, which is practically unheard of. So you could sort of term that as an outlier, but I chose not to because what if they're self-employed and they make lots of money, so they work 9 months of the year, and then the other 3 months of the year they decide to go sip pina coladas in Maui. I mean, that's up to them. And we could throw that in there. So all right, let's check her out. Can everyone see this? Yeah. All right. Bump it up. There we go. All right, so this is done in Python, clearly, because I am not smart enough or stupid enough to use R. I'm not sure which one, but probably smart enough. So basically, read the data in, and with pandas you can sort of just do tail or head to sort of get a cursory understanding. It's familiar to anyone who uses Linux to get a cursory understanding of what the data looks like. So we got timestamp, years of experience, number of hours worked, desired number of hours worked, days off, salaries, their stack, meals. Do you want a free Tesla? Just about everybody. What key street count and all that stuff. So here's the little function to sort of bin the sizes. This is a standard for the U.S. If you're under 7, it's micro. If it's under 250, it's a small company, medium, large, and whatnot. And then you can sort of apply that as a lambda to that particular column in your data frame. I did a head to check it out, and now you can see that we've gone away from what was our previous, from 250, 10 and 1 and 5 to small and micro and whatnot. Then I also subjectively chose to drop columns that didn't particularly give me any insight. So things like timestamp, desired number of hours worked, free Tesla, public speaking. And now I'm just going to try to get an understanding of what the data is like. So let's try to understand the data, describe it. You can call the describe function on the pandas data frame to get what's the count, the mean, the standard deviation, the max, which is pretty neat. You get all this stuff for free. You don't actually have to do any of this yourself, as long as you know what functions and tools to use. So, right, what's interesting here is, well, clearly salary is always interesting. Minimum salary is 20,000. I pity the person. If you're 65,000, if you're from 20 to 65,000, you're in the bottom 25%. If you're if you make 77,000, under 77,000, you're in the bottom 50%. If you make over 95,000, you're in the top 25%. And sort of the same thing applies for just about anything you can see here. So I could actually draw a histogram of this if I wanted to, but I did this last night almost. So yeah, lazy. Now on to questions. What's the most common company size, years of experience, number of jobs, number of books read, and you can pretty easily just call mode on those particularly selected columns. So the most common company size is, what was 2? 2 is small, yeah. For the respondents, most common company size is small. The most common stated years of experience is 10, which is kind of interesting. Most common work history counts were 3 and 4. The most common number of books read was 3, and the most common salary mentioned was 75K, which is kind of neat. What are the most common stack tools? To do that, first I need to sort of, because we got free text, and I need to be able to vectorize the text and so I can count those each particular token. So I've got a little function here to split the free text on the semicolon, and then use the scikit-learn feature extraction to do a vectorize it, and so this gives me 161 mentioned sort of stack tools. If I take a look at what those are, we have things like .NET, Airflow, Android, Anger, baby bottles and burp cloths, CentOS, chairs, no way. I guess they don't stand while they code or do other things. C#, CSS, CSS3, whatnot. Cool stuff, go. So, I turned this into a data frame, joined it to my other data frame, and did a sum, sorted it ascending, and now we can see the most common stack mention tools: JavaScript, Linux, Node, Ruby, Rails, Postgres, Nginx, PHP, MySQL, Angular. So clearly either a very webby crowd or or very full stack, right? Because a lot of JavaScript, a lot of JavaScript makes up more than 50% of the respondents. Next up, I try to find out if there are commonalities in groups of responders that machine learning can sniff out on our behalf. So can I take a group of respondents and say, this group of people, work at a company that's, this group of people work, make about roughly, $60,000 to $75,000 a year. They work at, small size company, and they like to read roughly they read roughly 3 or 5 books, while this other group, has this and that and this and that, these attributes. So to do that, I could do some clustering. Chose to use a basic k-means clustering algorithm, and just said, basically just dumped what I had at it, and all this naked growing, to see what it would come up with for my first attempt. Worked, but if you notice, these are the cluster labels, so cluster 0, cluster 2, cluster 3, and whatnot. If you notice, it seems like the cluster zeros are in the sort of 70, to 90,000 range. The cluster 3s are in the low 50s, and the cluster 2s are in the 120 range. So clearly, what was happening here is that salary outweighed all the other features in the clustering. And the reason for that is because salary is the biggest number out there. So, and k-means clustering is sensitive to scale. So what I need to do is to denormalize the data to sort of bring the scale down. And so that's what I did here. It's to normalize the data, to bring the scale down. So that's what I did here. So now we've got everything between 1 and 0. So you can't, except for company size, right? We've got everything between 0 and 1. So one particular feature doesn't overshadow the rest of them. And I did another cluster, and now you see, here's the normalization algorithm right here. That's the feature minus the mean value divided by the max value minus the mean value. So it's a min-max scaling. All right, so now I've got my clusters after normalization, and they tell me absolutely nothing. Why do they tell me absolutely nothing? Because there's just way too many features, too many dimensions. We've got roughly 200 different features, and so it's hard for my puny little brain to say, this person was put into this cluster because they have this and 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 this, and I'm running out of limbs to count all the features that went into the decision to put this particular person into this particular cluster. So clearly, if I need to fix that, what I need to do is dimensionality reduction. And I can do that with PCA, but it gets a little hard to understand. And what I'm really going for is things that are understandable. So what I choose to do instead is just select a couple of things. Select a couple of things to cluster on. And this works a lot better. So I've got cluster 1 who makes between 20 and 70,000. 20 and 77,000. They have between 0 to 3 days off, 0 to 30 days off, and they work between 1 and 6. They've worked at between 1 and 6 jobs, and so on and so forth. So pretty neat, pretty cool. We're running up on time, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time explaining the clusters, but it's there. It's on GitHub. You can go check it out. The last thing I said is, so what are the important features of this data set when it comes to salary, and can we predict salary based off of the features? And I chose to use a decision tree because, again, I'm going for explainability, right? With the decision tree, you get a bunch of, what you end up with is a bunch of rule sets that say something like, if you have this particular feature, and you have this particular feature, and you have this particular feature and everything, then you should be making this particular amount. Or better interpreted, people with this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature make this amount. It's people with this and this and this and this feature make that amount. Again, a little bit of play between correlation and causation, but having a decision tree take into account multiple features versus just one feature gives you better margins of error. So here is what I've got, and I've got a nice tiny decision tree for us to all lean in and squint at. Raw. All right, so one of the things that the decision tree also does is because it goes through recursively, goes through each and every feature in your feature set. You get to see what was taken into. We get to see what features are most important in making decisions. So now, because this is normalized data, you won't. It's hard to tell what this actually means, but. And I had a sheet where I translated, but I forgot to bring that, where I basically min-max scaled it to the actual data. But you know, if you have years of experience less than, I believe that number was 8, then books read comes into account. And if you've read less than 1.5 books, which means 1 or 0, then whether you have a 401k comes into account. And if you do have a 401k, then you'll be making this amount. And again, I could tell you what this amount is, but I didn't actually finish this because it was done last night. But three people who have these particular characteristics made X amount, let's say 70,000, which is pretty neat, right? You can then predict that if you've got all these things, you expect to make this, you know, X amount. You know, if you don't have a 401k, then you know it's one of these two amounts. If your days off, if you've read more than that, then days off comes into play. Days off becomes a more important feature in predicting what your earning power is. If you do have more than 8 years of experience, then do you have a degree? If you have a degree, you know, it's going to take a look at your years of experience again, and it's going to take a look at your years of experience again, and this time the user experience is, if I remember that correctly, that was 10. And it's going to look at, you know, well, if it's less than 10, then it looks at the number of books you've read and the number of hours you work. It's pretty cool. I should have the numbers to translate it, but I don't. I apologize. But what's neat about it is you can then see what factors really speak to what your earning power is and things like that. Again, disclaimer, this is closer to correlation than causation, but it's certainly and I didn't have a large enough sample size to be able to, you know, divide it into a training and a test set, you know, a test and a training set and a proof set and everything. So I don't have the numbers for the margin of error, but it's, you know, here it is, and maybe we can get more data to do that later. So that's what I've got, and Jared is gonna sort of come clean up here if we've got this right here. Yep, the end.
Thanks, Dan. So, all right, am I hot now? Hot. Not muted. It's unmuted. Battery, maybe. Hello. All right. Is this the end? I'd like to think that it's not. I'd like to think that this is the beginning, that we can incorporate this into like the yearly life cycle of this community where you guys all work together with me, with everybody, to create a new survey, to analyze it, and to share the results. I think that'll be healthy for our community to have that sort of openness. I think that'll be interesting data. I think we can make a better survey the next time around that allows us to cluster the data in a more meaningful way, and to maybe gather some other interesting data points. I think we can have better community participation, so we have larger sample size, so we get our errors down and all that good stuff. So if anybody has any questions, I have a few minutes for that. But thank you for coming out. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.
All right, so I think we got time for a couple of questions. Any questions out there? Yeah.
Hi. Is there? Can we test for a correlation between? Because you mentioned procrastination. So this is a little inquisitive thing for me. Is there a correlation between procrastination and the amount of? If you do less procrastination, are you going to get paid more? Are you going to deliver better quality? It's a strange one. It's a bit out there, isn't it? But I do have there's an offer here as well. So if you feel like you procrastinate, I've got a suggestion for a presentation as well. Is anyone familiar with the Pomodoro technique? How many people in the crowd? I just want to get it. Who's using it? Keep your hand up if you're using it. Probably about less than 10? Okay. How is it working out? Ho-hum? Better than not using it. All right, so the offer's out there if anyone's interested. You can maybe contact Brett and I'll be happy to give a presentation on it.
So what was the average, like, just the average Chadev? Like, what does the average Chadev look like? Did you answer that question? Okay. Okay. Hey, while you look for that, I'm gonna pass the mic over here.
I would be interested to know that for the folks who do have a degree, how many of those people, or maybe the better question would be, for those people, how much time do they spend outside of what they learn in the classroom teaching themselves as well? I feel like there might be some hybrid interaction in there that makes a difference in how well they do their work and how well they get paid.
This is the software that I use to create the graphs. Live. We'll do it live. That's useless on this. The average,
I just had a quick question. Did you consider running the numbers you got through like a total compensation calculator and seeing if you came up with any correlations there?
I did not.
Okay.
That sounds like a good thing that we can do round 2. So that's a good idea.
Hey, so did you find this to be helpful in your situation at work? Was this
That's
data
a good
useful?
question. So we'll see what happens after my boss watches this talk. And hopefully, yes. But even, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
You had mentioned the inspiration was because of you, the employee, asking your employer.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I would like to see is separate the data out, because you're doing like a lot of stuff, salary versus that. Okay. Separate the people out, people who actually are employees working for employers versus the people that are self-employed who get their money directly by negotiating with customers, setting their own salary.
Yeah.
Separating those out, I'd be really interested in seeing that data.
Yeah, that's a good point where we would ask, like, are you self-employed, or that sort of thing, and then do two different analyses on those. This, I'm gonna get you. He had his hand raised first. Sorry. Messing up the flow, sorry.
Can you speak to what programming languages are paid the least and which ones paid the most?
We can do that analysis. I don't know off the top of my head. I didn't run that analysis. I don't know if Tim did, but we can pull that out of the data to look to do an analysis based on those tags. I didn't break it apart by tag. Tim did. I can get his data, put it into the software, and then create some charts.
So I know we're running close to time here. So let's everybody who needs to go back to work, please feel free to do that right now. Head on out. I know some of you have to get back, so don't want to hold you up.
I can stay here all day.
Yeah, this guy, he's got all day. So for the rest of you who want to stick around for a few more questions, that's cool too.
I just had two things that I wanted to see next year. One was a comparison of this with the Glassdoor data for different places in the country.
What was that?
Comparison of this with the Glassdoor data for different places around the country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Chattanooga versus can I make more money in like Asheville or something. And then the other one was, I know there's at least one company that's moving to open salaries and want to see like how that affects average compensation.
Oh, so I have a question on whether or not your company has an open salary policy, and then see if there's any, what those two clusters would look like. Yeah, those are great questions. We need to like create a Slack channel and document all this stuff. So, thank you.